Now that we have the user interface working, let's implement the business logic or application logic in the user class for handling registration. And so I'm going to start by going over to user, and I'm going to want to have a method for registering. So this is going to be public function register, and it's going to take the values that the user sent to the web server by filling out the form. So there's going to be a username and an email and a password and a password confirm. And then we're going to start validating some input. So first we want to make sure that they've actually sent a user. And if the username is empty, then what we want to do is return an object that describes both the status, which in this case is going to be an error, and the type of error. So there's going to be a message which will be an HTML formatted string that will get displayed to the user to show them what is wrong with their submission. And since I'm going to be returning the status object in a lot of different places, I'm going to define a private method on the user class that takes the status and the error and returns the status object, and then I'm going to return that. And that method doesn't need to know anything about a particular object. So I'm going to make that a static method which is available on the class even if you don't have an object available. So this will be private function get status object, and this is going to take a status and a message. And this is going to create a local object, just a generic one, and then it's going to set the status property to status, and it's going to set the message property to message, and then it's going to return the object. So that's just a convenience function. And then here I'm going to use it to return get status object. And so I need some constants here. I need one for status error and one for error no password. I'm sorry, no username. And so these are going to be local class constants. So const, here are my two statuses. So there's an OK status and an error status. And then here are going to be the error messages. And I'm going to include HTML here and just display whatever HTML is sent back as the error. And so I'm going to want to make this red. So let's create a span with style color colon red. And then the actual message is going to be error, no username was supplied. Okay. And then I'm going to test just this much. So In order to call this register method, I need to get an instance of the user class. I need to make a user object and then call the register method and pass in username, email, password, and password confirm. And that's going to happen in the AJAX that gets called when the user clicks the OK button in the register form. So that's going to be handled by doRegister. So in doRegister, instead of just returning the post, I'm going to be returning the status object. So this is going to look like user is new user. And then I need to pass in the post values to the register method. So status is equal to $user pointer register. And I could just say like $under post of username key and so on and so forth. But I'm going to wrap this in a utility function. So let me go ahead and create some utility functions. And I'm going to create a utility function called getPostValue. And I'll pass in a key. So if not is set $under post, or not is set $under post sub key, then return an empty string. Else return $under post sub $key. And then I'm going to go ahead and use that function here and doRegister. So first I need to require that file. And that's going to be in /includes/utilities.php. Get post value, and then I already have a class constant for that, user : register username key. So there's the username value, and this is going to be long, so I'm going to use this formatting for that, and then get post value user : register email key, and get post value user : register password key, and finally user : registered password confirm key. So now I have a status from registering, and that's what I'm going to return. So now if I go back here and reload, hit sign up, and then without filling in the name, I click OK. I get back status error, and then this message which is HTML that no username was supplied. And I have an extra span here, so let me take a look at my user class. Somehow I ended up with that, so fix that, hit OK again, and now it works correctly. So on the register content side, when I get this data object back, instead of just console.logging it, I want to check the status. So if data.status equal, and then I want to use the actual user constant, and I'm already requiring user.php. So let's go ahead and put that in a variable. So this is going to be status error is equal to user : status error. And then here, I'm going to have a double quoted string, and then the value of the PHP variable status error. So if there was an error, what we're going to do is set the HTML of this error message to be whatever the error's message was. So $, # error message .html data.message. Make sure that's the right one. It's in user. Yeah, so the message property of the object. So this should display the error message. Error, no username was supplied. And I think I want to make that bold as well. So let's go ahead and do that in user. Okay. If I want to style this some more, I have this in the error message ID span, and so I can add CSS for that, but I'm just going to leave that like this for now. And instead I'm going to go back to this do register. Actually, I'm going to go back to user, and let's start filling this out. So now I've checked the username. I also want to check email and password confirm. So email, password confirm, and then these are all going to be status error. This is going to be no email, no password confirm, and then I'll copy this and paste 3 more copies. So this is going to be email, password, and password confirm. So no username was supplied, no email address was supplied, no password was supplied, and no password confirmation was supplied. And I shouldn't actually have to change anything to test this, so that works. No email address was supplied. There, and then delete that. No password was supplied. Test me. No password confirmation was supplied. And then when we have all these things, we're going to get nothing, because we're not returning a status object just yet if the register was successful. So we'll get there. So now we know that they've specified username, email, password, and password confirm. We might also want to validate the email. And there's a function in PHP that will let you do that called filter var. And it's going to be something like this. So valid is filter var, and then you give it the value you want to check to see whether it's valid or not. And then there are a bunch of different filters that you can use. So like filter email, filter validate email. Here are the other ones you can check: Boolean email, float, int, IP address, MAC, regular expression, or URL. You can check whether your string is a valid one of any of these types. So we'll use validate email. And if this succeeds, if email is a valid email address, then it will be stored in valid. If it's not valid, then valid will be false. So we want to say if not $valid, then, and actually I'm going to go ahead and simplify the code just a little bit. So if not that return value, then I'm going to return an error. So invalid email. So the email address you specified is invalid. So now let's try mark.goodman.pcc.edu. That's not a valid email address. Let's go at, still not invalid, still not valid. How about at pcc.edu? Nope. Mark at, nope. Actually, that should work. So let's go ahead and put a breakpoint in there. And enable debugging. And hit OK. And we'll accept the path mapping. So here I am. Let's see what we get when we type $email. So that's not the valid one. Let's actually continue here. Let's make this be valid. Okay, so now this should be a valid email address. I'm going to call filter var on email filter validate email. Oh, and it doesn't like this particular bit of code here. So let me go ahead and continue and add a line. Valid is equal to this. And put a breakpoint there. Okay, so valid is this piece of text. And, oh, I'm not returning a status, so the status doesn't get updated. I still have the old one there. Okay, so it actually is working, but I'm not displaying a correct message or anything. So let's actually fix that so that we can see what's going on. I'm going to go ahead and at the end, after I've done all my input validation, I'm going to return I was going to make that static, wasn't I? Let's make that static because it doesn't have to be associated with the object. And then I'm going to replace this pointer get status with user : get status. So I'm going to call it as a static method now. And then the status here is going to be user status OK. And I don't actually need a message here, so I'm just going to put an empty string. Okay? And then on this side, so if data.status is an error, then I display the error message, else I'm going to close the dialog, because that would mean that the user is registered successfully. Well, for now, I'll do that. So if I hit OK now, oh, I have to turn off debugging. Go ahead and reload. Sign up. No username. So email. So there's a valid one. No password confirmation was supplied. And I've filled in the form correctly, so it's gone away. All right, so now let's try some email addresses again. So that's actually not a valid email address. This is a valid email address, so it goes away. So email validation seems to be working.